Okay, I have a guest with me today. I have Antoni Corone. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are. Ding, 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 ding. Grand prize winner.
So, my first question is, what was it like growing up in Willoughby, Cleveland?
It was gorgeous. Well,
Yeah.
in fact, it was so gorgeous that there was a little community that was called the Arrowhead Shore Club. There was a little clubhouse at the end of it. And Arrowhead was a development that was built on Lake Erie, sort of maybe a half a mile away from it.
Mm,
And it went east and west on what was called north and south on what was called Lakeshore Boulevard. But the bottom line was every street was named after an Indian. There was Seneca, Seminole,
really?
Tioga, Cherokee, Shawnee, and I lived on Cherokee Trail. And so it was a kind of time of life when you had to be in when the street lights came on. If this snow was on the streets, we would bumper hop cars and ride them down. We all had
Mm,
paper routes. We all met at 5 in the morning. Can you imagine today's age, moms letting their kids out before middle school to go deliver papers and then on Fridays to go knock on strangers' door to collect what do you mean you don't have my 35 cents, Mr. Johnson? Yes, I can come back tomorrow. That's what it was. We played football. You tried out for a team. If you made it, you made it. It is, in fact, one of the quaintest little Last Stop Willoughby was a Twilight Zone episode. It's got a little
really?
gazebo in the center of town, and the high school was called the South High Rebels. It still called South High, and I'm not sure if the mascot is the Rebels or not, but we had a rebel with a rebel flag. Our helmets had rebel flags, and it wasn't indicative of
Really?
racism. It was
Yeah.
because the school system was divided into two sides, north and south. And south was where I went, and north were the Rangers. So it was the same Willoughby East Lake School District, and those were the two high schools in it. But of course, it got canceled, and now I think there's just an S on the sides of the helmet. Although
The
I'm
Washington football team?
yeah, and the Cleveland Indians. I'm wearing right now my high school ring. I
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah, and it has a rebel hat on it and a little rebel flag on the
Yeah.
side. And it was because I'd lost it and I went to a 25th year reunion. And long story short, I saw someone with it. No, my son came home from high school and said, "Hey, Dad, here," and he gave me the high school class ring brooch, 500 and some dollars. And I said, "But do you want one of these?"
Oh.
And he's like, "No, man, I don't want one of those." And I said, "Thank goodness." But now I wanted to know where mine was. And I remember giving it to Diane Aykroyd to go steady with back in the day. And I don't know if she ever gave it back to me or what. And then when my father died,
In the river.
no, I went through his drawer like where his stuff was,
Yeah.
and there it was in a box. He had found it and he was going to give it to me. Uh, I think for my like something birthday, my 60th birthday or something, but he didn't make it that far. And I found it. I was like, oh
Wow.
my gosh, he had it all this time.
Wow.
So I still wear it to this day, and I wear it in films to make it appear as though it's a fraternity ring or something. That's a long
That's
story
funny.
for nothing, isn't it? But yeah, Willoughby was great. I
No.
I wanted to write a series of adventures and call it the Arrowhead Shore Club and put all my friends in it with fictitious names and talk about the times we went down to the airport and crossed the runway to try to gig
Yeah.
frogs. And one of my friends went in and it somehow slipped and drowned. It got tangled in some barbed wire, and we used to walk out on the lake on the ice, but was horrifically stupid because the ice was all
Yeah.
just jagged shards, really thick, jagged shards. But I never got around to it because I got tired of doing things that I had to convince people to buy or or distribute.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I never did. One day maybe when I get older. I
Yeah.
loved Willoughby. My 50th year
Interesting.
reunion is coming back this year, but I'm not going to
No? You don't wanna go?
go. Mm-mm. No, when I went last time, I saw people. I was like, "Wow! Oh, look at you! Everybody looks so different, except me, of course. Yeah, no, I look different too.
Yeah.
But really, after about 5 seconds, there was really nothing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that's yeah, I could
Outgrew
see
it.
that,
You know,
yeah.
there was an interesting thing where they would say. "Oh my gosh, this is Anthony. I knew you." And you're like, "What?" I really wasn't
Yeah,
popular. I was kind of a class clown, perhaps. And then after 4 or 5 of those, "He's an actor. Did you see him in?" "Well, if you don't blink,
yeah,
maybe," kind of thing. And then I would say, "Well, to the wife or husband, what do you do?" "Oh no, I'm just a nuclear physicist." But you're an actor. I'm like, oh my gosh, they have such a distorted sense of value, I think.
yeah.
So
It's it's America. How do you think Willoughby? Am I pronouncing it right? Willoughby? Is that how you
yes,
say it?
yes, will be.
Willoughby.
Yep.
How do you think that? Do you think in that some ways prepared you for acting?
No, maybe. There was I wanted to be a drummer, and
Really?
so my grandmother was an auction type. She had a curio shop, and she went to she bought me at a garage sale, I think, a set
Yeah.
of drums. It had a Playboy bunny head on the front on the bass, and I thought it was the best, and I thought it was great. And I wanted to. I would play in my garage, and then there was a guy that lived right down the street from me, and he came by because he heard the drums, and he said, "Well, you play drums?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." He goes, "Can I try?" And he was so unbelievably good at it that I quit. I just went, if I can't even be better than someone on my own street, there's
Yeah.
really no point in pursuing this. And my dad said, no, 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 it's stick to itiveness is very important, And Gene Krupa, the legendary drummer, was playing at a place called the Theatrical in Cleveland, and he somehow finagled it so that he could
Mm,
bring his 12-year-old son in. And Gene Krupa came up to the table and said, "Hey, son, don't quit playing." And gave me his sticks, and my dad
mm,
said, "Don't play with those." And of course I did, and banged them all up. I also banged up a football signed by the 1964 Cleveland Browns because I won a pass, punt, and kick contest there, and represented Cleveland in a statewide competition. I think I forget where it was, at Cleveland Stadium, and they also gave me a varsity jacket
mm.
with it. And my dad said, "I'm putting these in the attic. I don't want you to touch them." And of course, I wore them and played with it in the street. And then, like he did with my ring, he showed up on a birthday with it. You go, "Here, don't you wish you had listened to me?" I said, "Yeah, I really do." It was all scuffed up. You could hardly read any of the names or anything. And then I ended up working as a day player on any given Sunday, and Jim Brown was sitting right next to me. And I said, "Wow, man, I can't believe I'm sitting here next to Jim Brown." Jim, when I was Mr. Brown, I think he even called. When I was young, I joined a pass, punt, and kick contest, and he just turned around and looked at me like I was talking
Yeah.
Greek. "What the hell you point, brother?" Like
I
that.
could see that. Yeah, I
Like
could see him doing that.
yeah, and I just went, never mind, man. I got no point. He's just nowhere close to being a role model at all. He's sadly.
So he just kinda was just, he didn't see the moment that you were having where you're like, "I'm recognizing somebody I haven't seen in a long time," and he's just
A
like,
legend.
"What's your
No,
point?" Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, he was, and I heard, and I saw stories, and have read stories about how he is, later on in life. But terribly, terribly disappointing to me. Although, I might have been disappointing to other people too. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember him in, Mars Attacks, the Tim Burton film where he plays the boxer or whatever, and Jack Nicholson is in there, and he plays like a Richard Petty type character, and
Oh wow,
the
I never saw
chemistry
it.
between the 2 was pretty funny. So, moving on to, so I found it fascinating how you ended up getting into the business. You were a lifeguard, and this is on, am I correct, Porky's 2 the next day?
Yeah, it was my first thing. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
They were filming near where my lifeguard stand was in Hollywood, Florida, and a buddy of mine said, "Hey, all of these extras are going to be housed here for dinner all night long. You should stop by." And so I was single, and I said, "Yeah, sure, I did." And then I went to watch, and someone said, "You can't stand here." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because you're in the shot." And I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, "If you want to watch, you can go over there and watch." And I said, "Well, who are those guys? They're the stars." "What?" But yeah, come on. Hey, can I be in this? Anyway, I could do that. You could be an extra. And I broke every rule, long story short, and ended up being upgraded on my first day on a set before lunch. And I said, wow, um, I think I'm going to do this. Uh, there's another dad story in there. I don't want to bore you with it, but I had very long hair. I had Michael Landon type Tarzan hair,
Really?
and they said you need to come and get in line. Part of the long story, and I heard, oh, what's up? And they said we're going to cut your hair because this is a period piece. I said, well, hold up. So I
So it's
didn't
like
go out
Full
for
Metal Jacket.
I did, yeah, it was kind of, well, Opie kind of haircut. And I never played high school football as a senior, and I
Mm,
represented North Willoughby because I didn't want to get my hair shorn. And my dad was disappointed, so disappointed. He couldn't believe it, And I
yeah.
said, and my high school picture is an embarrassment. You should Google it. I got like long hair down the hair. I look like an idiot. And I didn't want to do the same thing again to him. So I went in the bathroom and I slicked it all back and got away with it. Went to another hairstylist. Who did your hair? Oh, he did. Really? Yeah. She sprayed it all and pinned it in. And
Oh, wow.
the guy had earlier said to me, "Hey, I was walking around with no shirt on, trying to pick up girls while I in the holding session." And he comes up, he goes, "Hey, kid, why don't you put a shirt on?" And I said, "Hey, pops, yeah, why don't you jump in a lake?" But that's not what I said.
No, I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
I know what you said.
yeah, yourself in the lake. Yep. And so that began that little war.
Wow,
Yep.
that's so, like, so did that just did it, like,
I decided to
it
try. I decided to try to be an actor. And I
mm,
had no idea what was. So growing up in Willoughby, I had some friends, like that was the original question, that were very, very talented. That guy, Jimmy Black, God rest his soul, was a wonderful musician, could play like classical gas on an acoustic guitar by ear. And
mm,
that's who I used as a benchmark on my own street. What was my luck? And then I had a bunch of friends also that I would. I was a good. I had a good memory. It seems I was the kind of kid that in school I could get B's and A's without paying attention, and the teachers tried to always catch me while I was. And eventually they said, "Look, these people aren't as smart as you, are not as clever, or not as attentive, or whatever, and it's not fair that you distract them." And so I remember listening to and entertaining all my friends during a drug infused camp out one time, almost verbatim doing Alice's Restaurant by Arlo Guthrie after hearing it twice. So I had some very hilarious friends and I had to compete with them. But I was a keen observer. I remember being in a mall saying, "Oh, look at that guy and don't think of a turtle." And I could look at people's dress and decide what their personality was relative it. I don't know, maybe a little Rain Man-ish. But I was when I went into ninth grade, I went to a Catholic school, Immaculate Conception, until eighth grade, and I was quite the nerd. If it wasn't for sports, I would have been very much a nerd, I guess. And when I went into the public school system in ninth grade, I went in listening to the Monkees. And these guys had like Led Zeppelin and James Gang. And I was like, what is that? So I really had to keep up and maintain some sort of, coolness, if that's the word. I wore plaid pants and a cardigan sweater because my mom didn't know what fashion was because we wore uniforms. So who knows? I think all of that may have worked to it. But stumbling
yeah,
into it was interesting. And if someone had said, "You're going to grow up and be this," I would have went, "Well, that's unbelievable. And I can't imagine how I would go about it." I just was in the right place in the right time. And seemingly have talent at it. It's so
yeah,
free and it's such a gift to me. I don't even really have to try. I'm not trying to sound pretentious. It just happens. Uh,
yeah.
I could imitate my great grandfather from Italy. I remember them putting me on the dining room table at my grandmother's house once and telling me to do an impression of grandpa. Anthony, save you money. I was maybe 5, 6 years old.
Interesting. So you
Yeah.
had an attention to detail that you would pick up from other people.
Or just in general, I didn't really realize it. I thought everybody had it. I to this day, I watch television, and show of shows was my favorite. Sid
Mm,
Caesar was doing all this nonsense babble as a French guy or an Italian guy, and I could
mm.
emulate that. I could do like maybe 15 or 16 different cartoon characters. Uh, I could do a variety of accents. I could.
Just from that you had the
Just
ear for it.
I had the ear and somehow was able to figure out how I had to place my tongue and
Yeah,
instrument to be able to
the
do it. And my
instrument.
children, both my daughter Tyler and my son Dylan, can both also do accents. My wife cannot. Sadly, poor thing. We went to North Carolina to my dad's retirement party, and we drove all the way through in a van, and we went to this North Carolina diner, and the gal comes up and she's chewing gum. She goes,
Ah.
what kind of potatoes you want? Grits, potatoes, you want bacon? And they both looked at each other and they went, hillbilly, like because they had never heard anyone with that accent. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. They're just, went. One of the priests said, was from India, and he was naming the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit, and the only thing they knew that voice from was Madagascar, and
Yeah.
so it was amazed when they put a face to it. So those embarrassing moments happened to me.
What part of North Carolina? Because I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, which
Rodanthe. We went one of those giant houses on the what's the
yeah, I
word
don't
I'm
even
looking.
know. I don't even know where that is. To
It's on
be
the Outer
honest with you.
Banks. It's on the Outer
Oh, it's
Banks.
on the Outer Bank. Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
we're all from Cleveland. We all drove there and had this giant house
Okay,
with four laundry,
cool.
but 50 bathrooms, whatever.
That's fun. Now, when you were doing the lifeguard thing, is that something that would you watch people the same way you would in school?
Oh, well, I had to watch people to make sure they didn't drown. You know, and since we live in a multicultural place, we were inundated with French Canadians, and they were the ones who would go in the water when it was the most inclement with jellyfish and
Mm,
rip currents, like wearing a hoodie and stuff, on a walkie-talkie going, oh man, please don't go in front of my chair. Please don't go in front of my chair. So no, not really. I was just sitting there staring. It was a very, I didn't like the job at all. One guy, the one
yeah.
time came up to me and he was gesticulating and his hands were like this. And I caught myself looking at them. And then I said, I'm not going to, and I did again. And on the third time, when I looked at him, I said, I'm sorry. I keep looking at your hands. What happened to your fingers? And he said, oh, frostbite. I was on a fishing boat in Boston or something, and it went down, and I had to row
Mm.
in a little lifeboat, and the water would froze my hands to the oar. And when I was saved, they had to amputate my fingers. And I thought, wow. I said, I don't know
Uh,
if I'd have the wherewithal to do that. And he said, well, it wasn't about bravery. It was about I just wanted to row so fast so I could keep warm. Otherwise, I would have froze. I never even thought of my fingers.
wow, that
Survival thing.
sounds
Yeah.
that
I
sounds
asked for his
painful.
autograph, but no, I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
As for his autograph, and
Yeah,
yeah, he had
yeah,
no
he couldn't hold
he
the
had no
pen.
he had no
Yeah,
fingers.
yeah. Brum, bum. Oh boy, how silly.
Yeah, put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
Um, Interesting. Did you like film growing up? Were you like a movie guy or?
No, I was a TV guy.
Mm,
Because like there was the Saturday night at the movies. I was born in 1955. So,
yeah.
we had three channels, no color television. First colored show I watched was Petticoat Junction. But to this day, I can remember most of the jingles and some of the actors' names
Really?
that were in it. I didn't care about that at all. I had a crush on Diane Carroll. Uh,
Thank you from
from she was in a nurse. She was a nurse. What the heck was the name of her
and
show? I want
what
to say
was the name?
Julia. Julia, was that the name of the show?
Uh, I'm
Maybe. Who
trying to
cares?
think.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. And but Green Acres was my favorite
yeah.
of all
Green
of them.
Acres,
And
Arnold the pig, and
it was the voices and every single person. Their personalities were so perfect. And
yeah.
also Mayberry RFD.
Mm,
The one guy would always warm up before he talked. It was the guy who was the agriculture. Well, did that, and they all had their interesting quirks, and I could do impressions of a lot of them.
What happened? What about Mr. Ed? Did you watch that?
I did, but not wasn't really. That was I wasn't amused by the Mr. Ed show much.
Or what
Gomer
was it, that
Pyle,
one,
I was.
Gomer Pyle?
Gomer Pyle and the Sergeant Carter. Uh, but who I forget who the guy was in Mr. Ed. He was boring to me. He just really kind of just all
Yeah,
dressed up, went to the stable, talked to the horse. Someone had
yeah.
string on his horse's legs to make
My mother, the
other the
car. What
car,
is
yeah,
my
car 54. Oh, yeah. Those
so
guys in car 54 ended up being together in the Munsters. Grandpa was his partner,
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
Frank Fred Gwynn's partner in it.
yeah.
I guess he brought him on.
So, all right, so you get, like, the acting bug. So what do you do? Do you just, like,
So I
did
was
you
in
go
I was a waiter, and that was my like job sort of. And
mm,
luckily for me, I was able to manipulate shifts enough to take off to go on auditions. And I was able to learn lines well. I never did well commercially where most of the money was, but I
mm,
booked a lot of uh, parts in films. South Florida at that time was pretty much the third Hollywood. It was the only game in
yeah,
town. There were no tax incentives. It was just New York or LA or Florida. And Gentle Ben and Flipper were all filmed down there.
gentleman.
And yeah, Ivan Tors Studios was kind of what brought it all down there. And so there was a ton of film production. And there were three people in power, casting directors who you had to endear yourself to, and then you were all set. Uh, and
Yeah,
the lady named Dee Miller, God rest her soul, she was very responsible for my. And another one called Beverly McDermott worked as a horsewoman, and she was Burt Reynolds' casting person. And I met first time I really had to think about what acting was, aside from being an extra or a stand-in, was Don Johnson's photo double on Miami Vice, and they would shoot like over my shoulder on my hands, pushing the boat or driving the car or holding the gun or
mm,
whatever. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be more in front of the camera. And the guy who took my place ended up being his stunt double. And I really didn't want to be that either. I got upgraded by doing a stunt, and I thought I might
mhm,
want to be a stuntman. And when I asked, they said, "Well, can you ride a horse? No. Can you ride a motorcycle? No. Are you a martial artist? No. Are you a gymnast? No. Uh, well, are you a boxer? No. Well, what makes you think that you could be a stuntman then? I go, well, I'm an athlete, I guess. I don't know. And so I ended up being in the four or five guys in the gang of goons. The directors would always come up and go, okay, I need somebody to say something. And he would audition us all right there in a line. You say it, you say it, you say it. And I got chosen every time. And
yeah.
eventually I became goon number one.
Coup number 1, huh?
Yeah, it's goon
Wow.
number one. I also on
Yeah,
my
because I saw
resume.
that you 'cause I saw that you were in Cape Fear. You're one of the correctional
Oh
officers.
my gosh, yes, that was an interesting story too. I mean, everything is an interesting story. So I went to read for Cape Fear, but
Yeah,
Mr. Scorsese only wanted to see people who had actually been in prison to read for prisoners.
of
You know, I'm
course.
like, come on, man, really? Okay, yeah, sure, whatever.
So
So
you tell him I was in prison?
yeah, I was in prison for larceny by trick in Tennessee once, but yeah, that didn't count. So I get a chance to read as a prison guard, and my line was, "Hey, Katie, what about your books?" So I said the
Yeah.
line, "Hey, Katie, what about your books?" as he was leaving the correctional facility, and guy comes up to me who's Marty's first assistant director's on this side, and Marty's where I am, and the first assistant director looks at me and says, uh, "Anthony, Marty would like to know if you could slow your walk down a little bit." The guy's standing right next to him. And I
Yeah.
looked at Mr. Scorsese and I said, yeah, tell Mr. Scorsese I'd be happy to. It's like what? It was
Yeah.
insane. And then later on, I was on a film with somebody that was in a position to hire him as a producer.
Mm,
And they said, "How is it working with?" And he said, "I never even talked to him." They did a movie
mm,
together, and it was up for an Academy Award. And the actor said, "Yeah, I never even talked to him. He was in a little Pope mobile, and he sent this person out to talk to me." At one time, I read
mm.
for a Woody Allen movie, same personality kind of,
Yeah.
and I sat in an anteroom for maybe 30 minutes, and finally he walked across the hallway 20 feet away from me and just glanced at me, and then 5 minutes later, somebody came up to me and she goes, "Okay, thank you very much. You're not right for this."
That's what he does.
Yeah,
He'll put you in a green room and he'll walk. I mean, people think that that's kind of a joke, but it's like, no, he seriously. Gene Garofalo says he just stared at her
yeah,
and he
it
said
actually
no.
is doing you a favor because I'm not that person, but there are many people that I've gone on auditions and they'll just massage you through the whole thing. When
Mm.
when I'm producing or directing something, and you walk in the door, I know whether you're right for it or you're not right for it.
Yeah,
But what I'm going to say, look, I don't know who sent you, and I used to. I don't know who sent you, but you might as well fire them because you're not even close to what we asked for.
it's like going to New York when you if you're like interviewing tenants, you know, in like 5 seconds whether you want them or not, and be like, okay, now I got to pretend like.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you. So, do you want to see this? You're thinking in the back of your head, no, 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 but I gotta be
yeah.
polite.
They said, "Wow, that was fantastic. Can you are you available? Wasn't that great, Bob? Oh man, it's so one." And when you walk up there, going, "Oh my gosh, someone should tell her to get out of the business." It was that kind of thing. So, and so I admire that because it's like, look, you're
Yeah,
not the right type. You're not going to work
yeah.
for me. That's
Well,
fine.
that's what David Lynch does something similar to that as well. He doesn't have you read sides. He just kind of talks to you, and he figures it out through meeting you whether
Yeah,
he
because
wants to.
ultimately, I think you're an extension of what you are as a person.
Yeah,
Whatever energy you give off, you can tweak it a little bit or not.
yeah.
Uh, Sidney Lumet was a completely different kind of a read.
Mm. Oh yeah, you
It
did. Yeah, find me guilty.
Yeah,
You
and
were in that.
that came out of Oz, I think,
Mm.
for some reason. I don't know. I think, but that's how I got to read. And he was just real accommodating, a gentle man. And I saw him. He would walk up to somebody and move their hair to the left a little bit, and he just stared at me for a few minutes, and he went, "Well, would you like to read?" I said, "Yeah, I would like to read." "Okay, well then let's read." And we read, and he went,
Wow,
"Okay, thank you." And that was that.
I could see him doing that. That's great. Um, because you've worked with so many directors. I mean, you worked with James Gray, you worked with Jay Roach, you worked with Oliver Stone, Martin Scorsese, Michael Bay. What are some of the things you learned from those people?
That's a great question. That every single person's process and the ability to articulate what they want, and in fact what they want, is completely different. So if you're on a show with one, they're so brilliant and have so much going on at once, they'll tell you something, and then once that's downloaded, they upload a new task for themselves, and that they have to revisit it to
Mm,
bounce you back into play again. uh they short out. And James was the kind of person, James Gray, I worked with him 3 times. That's actually a pretty, I had no idea who James Gray was or what We Own the Night was. I thought it was an independent movie. I wasn't really nervous about it. I went in, I did my read, and they said, "Well, they love you. You have to go back next week." And always when you have to go back in person, that's a difference. I'm going to get off on a little tangent now. Between the self tape thing and the in the room thing, the in the room thing is a whole nother animal than the self tape thing. The self tape thing, and I
yeah,
think they know it. You can hit pause. You can put a teleprompter up. You're not putting any huge effort in it. There's no stress involved in a self tape,
yeah,
and 90% of the time, you're not even your stuff's not even going to be seen because it's a big throw it against the wall and see what sticks kind of deal. Um, Unless the casting gatekeeper is endeared to one of your agents or not. But in the room deal, it's a whole nother thing. It's like being an Olympic skier. In fact, that's what I keep going back to my dad. What's your job like, man? I said, it, it's like being in the World Series with bases loaded and 2 outs and you're up. That's what it's like. You know, you gotta nail it. You really truly do. You can't mess up because now you're in your head and you're worried about,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, what? Uh, but each director was different. Sidney Lumet would shoot everything one way. Like he'd do the wide, he'd do the tight, he'd do the this, he'd do the that, he'd do the close-ups on every scene. So if you were a bartender, let's just say, and you had 5 scenes in the bar with different
Mm.
energy levels, you did all 5 scenes in a wide. He didn't flip back and flip back and flip back. And there are a lot of people that had, including me, had a difficult time. Okay, well, how do I match my continuity? You know, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then Carl Franklin would have a videotape of your rehearsals so that you could see how to match your continuity. Sometimes it would be an hour or an hour and a half before they went into coverage. Each one was different. Each one was different, and that truly is, if anyone's coming up, and I'm not saying that I've been doing it and making a living at it for a long time. Malleability is the most important,
Yeah.
real key thing that everybody's going to expect it to. Some people are very tolerant. That's okay, man. We'll just do it your way. Say what you want. This is a rough
Yeah.
template. And somebody come like you said that instead of this. Do you need to see the script? You know, I mean,
Watched that video of you with that girl. You were like, okay, I told you 3 times, man, to not, to say this line. This the third time you step in, and I mean, we didn't see the other two takes, but we see the take, and you stop her immediately and go in. And it's like, yeah, you got to get it in the one note. I mean, you
yeah.
need to be malleable. You can't like
The-
because it's
and the,
time.
so many people, and I think the reason why that happens is I started coaching people
Yeah.
for a couple reasons, but what I often see is people learn things in a pattern, right? And I'll use the phone number as a perfect example. If I tell you my phone number, you're expecting to hear this song, ba 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 334, right? But if someone gives me my phone number where you're learning ba 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 beep 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 ba ba ba, you're not even going to listen to any of those
Yeah.
numbers. You just your mind is blown. So similarly, they'll learn something in a rhythm, and they learn it in chunks of time too. So
Yeah.
la 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 or whatever, and they always put that pause there. And I said, for this gal, think about the thought, think about grammar,
Yeah.
think about this sentence is a thought, and this paragraph is a few of those thoughts come out. What exactly are you trying to say? And you're learning this word after this word after this word after this word after this word. You don't even know the ride. You're not even on the ride.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
because if you're worried about you sometimes, we're not going to let the other person finish the sentence. If we're like really angry, I'm not going to sit there and, wait for you to do it. I mean, if I mean it there's the technical aspect of that, where you kind of have to let them get their line out, but you're right on top of them, right on top of them.
yeah, and your
Yeah.
body is interrupting them. Like
Yeah.
yeah, all of that says it, and you're more than likely going to steal that edit from some. It's not going
Yeah.
to have this person talking the whole entire time because the reactions are as important, listening is as important. um, but that's what I learned from different directors, and
I
I
mean
didn't
that
learn
that
it from them. They weren't patient enough. It just they
yeah.
expected me to be that pony that could do that trick,
Well,
and I
Michael
said,
Bay, you better do it now.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
not a no nonsense guy.
No, he does. He doesn't play. He won't even, and he won't even tell you what he wants because he may know what's good, but he doesn't know how to get there. And I
Yeah.
saw, he'd be, luckily for me, it didn't work out that way. But he'd be like, okay, really, that sucked, man. Let's go again.
Yeah.
But he did do that to me. There was a thing we were supposed to drive over a causeway, and he says, okay, look, I'm going to be over here with Martin and
Will.
yeah, I know. I was trying to remember exactly how he said it. Martin and Will, because they're going to be doing
Yeah.
duvetine stuff, car landing and stuff. And he goes, I'm just going to hand this off to you. You got to drive your car over there. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to be flying off this transporter. He showed us all a mock-up of that scene. And he said, and there's going to be a chain, a swing is going to bash into you. Your hood's going to fly up, and you have to get try to save Gabrielle. I said, okay, cool, great. And so he goes, all right, I'm leaving. So he leaves, and the guy comes up and he says, hey, Anthony, how you doing? I go, good. Are you all set? I go, yeah, I'm pretty set. He said, okay, I'm going to attach the camera to the side of the window here. Okay, that was good. Great. Okay. All right, you cool? Yeah, I'm fine. You don't need to get out or anything, because if you do, you got to get out on that side. No, no, I'm fine. You don't need anything to drink. You don't need to go to the bathroom. No, no. That guy goes, hey, Anthony, how you doing? Sound guy? Yeah, how you doing? I know. He goes, "Look," but there were like 3 units of sound guys. He goes, let me see your level. So I had to show him my level list. So he goes, I'm going to be kind of like screaming. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's great. Good. So another guy comes in. And this went on. Hey, Anthony, how you doing? I'm stunt coordinator. So I'm going to put a guy with an AR-15 next to you. He's going to be popping off rounds out of the side window. The shell casings are going to come at you like this. So they'll hit, some of them may or may not hit you. And I knew that was the case because I sat in this hole waiting to come out of it. And there was a saw spitting out, whatever caliber bullets went into my shirt, burned me, like whatever. Another guy comes up. He goes, "Hey, yeah, are you cool? Slating yourself?" Oh yeah, yeah, oh, sure. And the vehicle guy goes, "Look, the brakes on this aren't really that good, bro. And we got two stunt guys. We were swerving in and out of, but you can only get up to about 40 miles an hour. But the more you do that kind of stuff, don't flip it because it's a Jeep and it's heavy on the side because of the camera. Don't. Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. So they say, okay, ready, go, 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 go. And by the time I got close to what I thought was a longer drive, I had said like two things. So Michael comes over, he takes the playback out, and he goes, "Oh my God, really?" He goes, that sucked. That was terrible. I want boogers coming out of your nose and spit flying out of your mouth. And so out of that whole sequence, two words that I can't say here came out, and that was all they took from that. So
Wait,
I,
you 2 words that came out from him
for
or
me,
from you? Yeah,
yeah, it was
from
just
you.
like organically, I just went da da da, da boom, and that was that. And
Yeah.
I've said a bunch of other stuff, but there it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
I mean, that's he's putting I mean, the good news is when you're putting in a situation like that, there's no time for you to think or do anything. You just basically go and do it. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
When you're
but
dealing
I
with
did have to think about all of the stuff that they told me about, and every new layer came by.
Mhm.
It says, write your own
Yeah,
dialogue, whatever you want to say, man. But I needed to have it happen by the time you get over this causeway. And
yeah.
as again, the causeway was
Plus
only a mile.
you can't go over 40.
Yeah, you got to
Can't
swerve in and out of three different cars. The hood's going out. You gotta play that. You gotta hit the you gotta the
got a
car. You
guy
gotta
with an
play in the bump.
AR-15
Yeah, right
shooting
next
you
to
with the
you.
bullets.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what was Tom Shadyac like on Ace Ventura? What was he like to work with?
Uh, it was basically Jim's thing. I mean,
Yeah,
he was the guy from In Living Color, and we all knew that he was this freaky, all totally out there thing just from watching him,
yeah,
and and it was basically all Jim. And Tom would just say, "Okay, we got it," or "No, let's try something different." But for me, I was just a reporter, and it was the first thing that I had done. That
yeah,
man, I was amazed. Like everywhere I went, "Hey man, saw you next. Hey man, saw you next." I'm like, "Whoa, that was crazy." I was only in one scene. I ended up working with Jim two more times after that.
he
The
did.
Truman Show and I Love You, Philip Morris.
You remind me a lot of Robert Forrester.
Really?
With your patience on the camera. I mean, we're gonna get to We Own the Night and Oz because I want to contrast the two because I think those are two roles that you played where they were like I like that you could play the character you play in We Own the Night is so different from that character and from a lot of the things that we saw you play.
Mm.
So when we get to that, um, I wanted to ask you though, what about Barry Sonnenfeld? How was he like?
He was also an interesting, funny that you should ask about him because I use a story about him in in some of the classes that I've taught. I've given
Yeah,
a line and it was like, "Oh my God, what happened to your hair?" And I'll give somebody just those words. I'll say that line, and so
yeah,
they'll say the line, "Oh my God, what happened to your hair?" Right, and so uh, and most people just say it like, "Oh my God, what happened to your hair?" Like that, which is whatever. And
Yeah.
and so I'm on this thing, and I say to him, "Uh, just out of curiosity, why did you hire me?" And he said, I mean, how do you decide who to hire somebody? And he goes, I really don't really like to tell people what my process is. He goes, but I will for you. You laughed. You laughed at him. You were like, you remember, oh my God, what happened to your hair? Like, what, really?
You were a real person. You were a real
Perhaps, or
person.
I found another flavor that no one else found. And I'm not sure why. It just came from, me, and no one knew why you were saying, "Oh my God, what happened to your hair?" And really what it was Tucci came out of a car. He was taking dance lessons, and he had a wig on. And he had like spandex clothes on. He pulls his Porsche into the lot, and I'm just driving out, and he gets out of the car, and that was my line. Oh my God, no, one of my lines. But
Yeah.
it's nice to know that I've worked with people that I didn't really know, like, oh my gosh, I'm working with this guy who's the that of
Yeah.
all that this is, because I may have been intimidated, nor have I ever
Yeah. I
really
think that was
watched.
good
Yeah,
that
I just went
that you
into it
had
and
that.
just, I didn't compare myself to anybody. I figured I was cast, as they say, casting comes from, somebody has to motivate you to find out where you need to go. Then they've casted incorrectly, and casting is a good part of
Mm.
it.